Well, I went to Putney School in Vermont for prep school. The first time I was away from home, and we had an English teacher. Her name was Ursula McDougall. She only taught one section of juniors. The rest were all seniors. But I was in her section of juniors that she taught. And her way of teaching was to put in the library on a rack of books all the books that she wanted us to browse over and pick. And what we could do was pick any book we wanted and read it, and at the end of the week there was a metal box with 3x5 cards. And each of them had our name on it. And we were to put down how many pages we had read that week. These books were never discussed. In class, we had grammar and we had spelling and we had writing, but reading was for pleasure. And instead of reading what you normally do in school, like Wordsworth or Shakespeare, Tennyson, etc., we read contemporary authors like T.S. Eliot, Robert Frost, and novels of contemporary writers like Virginia Woolf. So it made you really enjoy reading instead of trying to think that you had to memorize something or that you had to write about something or that you had to know what the symbolism was or anything like that. So I've really thanked her again and again and again for teaching in this way. And since I never had to tell anybody what I felt about To the Lighthouse, I never analyzed it or put it in words before now. But I do know that I went on from To the Lighthouse to Mrs. Dalloway, and then eventually I read Orlando, and somehow I felt that Virginia Woolf and I were sisters, that somehow I knew her personally, that she personally understood exactly how I felt, and that she was the only one who understood exactly how I felt. Now that I know something about her life, I think that maybe there was an intimacy because at the age of 15, I had a depression, the first depression I've ever had. It was serious enough that my mother called the nurse, and the nurse took me to the hospital and had me tested, and they decided that I needed thyroid pills, and I took them, and I got over the depression. But it turns out that later on in my life, I had a really terrible time. I've had a really terrible time with depression throughout my life, as a matter of fact. And so maybe, well, I don't know exactly, but I don't know what the emotional problem that Virginia Woolf had, but I imagine that she too was very depressed. And there must, I wonder sometimes, if her way of writing, her subtext, didn't hit me, because I think I was very much living in that world of dreams, daydreams and subtext, rather than in, the outer world, whatever you want to call it. I won't call it reality, because I think this other is just as real. So she really put into words feelings and impressions that I was feeling very strongly. And it seems to me that those of us who are this way, who are very sensitive to the colors and forms and feelings that are going on around us, have a much more difficult time using this sensitivity or living in this world with this sensitivity. So I felt that she was my very special, congenial, she was a sort of intimate friend of mine. She had reached my most intimate thoughts and moments and feelings. So when in I was still at Putney, yes, in 1941, when I found out that she had committed suicide, I felt as though I'd lost my best friend, my mother, and I felt angry. I remember walking it was up in the mountains of Vermont hills, and I remember going for a walk and getting furious at her. I said, "How could you do this to me? You were my ideal, and now you've gone and committed suicide." And I thought, I was really angry that she could have done that when she had given me such a wonderful idea about what living could really be like. And it was okay to see these things and feel these things. And now she was saying, well, it's not worth it. It's not worth it to see and feel and know all these things about life. I'm going to negate them all. I'm going to negate them all. Of course, it may be because I too was close to that feeling, although at the time I hadn't verbalized it. I mean, I knew I was depressed, but I didn't know enough to know that this condition was not normal. I thought that when you grew up, that was the way you were. You were just always depressed. And I thought that was the way life was. So I accepted it as a way of life. And it wasn't until quite a bit later that I realized that you didn't have to live this way. You didn't have to feel this way. But I think this novel, it's not a depressing novel at all. I think they do reach the lighthouse in the end. But you're dealing with the death of Mrs. Ramsay, which I imagine is supposed to be a very autobiographical novel. And because her mother died, I'm sure I picked up on that loss.